so that is one of the major mysteries of the case. But one of the key issues is how much primary radar is at. When I say primary, I mean both civil radar and military air defense radar. And so who could have seen this plane, depending on where it might have gone? And so I guess as an F-16 pilot, if you were, say, coming out of, imagine you were kind of coming from over the sea towards a country, would you know if you were being painted by primary radar?
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
Yeah. I think there are obviously systems out there, and if we talk about like surveillance planes that are more focused on collecting radar energy or signals intelligence, like they're going to have a better clue potentially of that. But I do think there are people, or there are countries, and there's intelligence that know the capabilities of like a military or even civil ATC as far as what their radar systems could see. But there's so many things that factor. It could be nefarious, or it also could just be system was down, system was degraded, system not capable of seeing it, train masking. Depending on where these things are, they might have a radar blind spot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, there's some indication that Indonesia simply turned its radar off at midnight. Like they didn't really care. Again, they weren't really worried about invasion. They weren't really worried about air traffic, and they just didn't want to spend the money, and they didn't want to pay the people their salaries to sit there all night doing nothing. So they go home.
Because you brought up a good point, right? Like, again, I have to like step out and say exactly what you said. Like, we've been a nation of war, right? For like 200 years, we're focused on it. But if a nation hasn't really been constantly at war, or if we're worried about planes being hijacked and we got planes sitting alert, like if that's not your mentality, but it's more budget friendly or budget conscious, like what's more important, what's going to weigh? It's like, yeah, if they just shut down the sites, but then they're also not going to convey the fact that they've shut down these radar sites and they just got someone manning ATC because it's cheaper, but they don't, I can see a lot of different possibilities here.
Yeah. I mean, one of the core ideas of air defense is that you don't want people to know what your air defense is. It's like, with your home, when you're trying to protect your home, you don't want a thief to know exactly where your locks are and where your cameras are. The less your attacker knows, the better. And I think part of that is also that you might have an air defense radar, and you don't want to switch it on. You don't want to just be constantly painting the sky, right? Because that tells any adversary they know exactly where they can go to avoid it.
100%.
And so even if you do have and another thing people need to realize is radars cost millions of dollars. They use a lot of electricity. They are manned by people who cost a lot per hour to operate, and their range is not that big. I mean, it might be maybe you can detect somebody out to 200 miles, but you imagine a circle that's 200 miles in radius, and imagine how big the Earth is. Like how many primary radars you would need. Now there are long range over the horizon radars and stuff, but like that is not something that a country like Indonesia is going to have. So I think one of the assumptions that I've had to wrestle with in talking about this case with people is people are like, oh, if it had gone to such and such a place, it would have been detected by so many countries' radar. Well, I'm like, tell me about Nepal's air defense capabilities. How many air defense radars does Nepal have? You don't know that. They might not have any because, frankly, Nepal is like stuck between China and India. They're not going to launch war with anybody. If anybody wants to overfly Nepal, Nepal's probably fine with it, actually.
Have a nut. I mean, that's the thing is I think you're hitting on a good point is, I mean, again, we take it for granted. Like, well, we just run our radars all the time, right? Because also if one breaks, like it's probably sourced somewhere in the United States or Europe where we can easily get a part. But if you're in Indonesia and a part breaks, well, now that system's down. Can you afford a new part? Are you bringing in a contractor from the U.S. or Europe to operate, or is it a local? I mean, there's so many things that come into play. So, like, to me, it doesn't seem too far fetched that, all right, you know what the flight schedule is. Guys are doing position reporting. That's good enough because how often does a black swan event happen? So it doesn't seem too crazy that, maybe the radars are off. Maybe the radars weren't working.
I think the thing you mentioned earlier too is really important to realize is that different places in the world operate in a different kind of style. And every place is not Switzerland. Every place is not super dialed into like we have to operate with maximum efficiency. We're going to get rated. We're going to have a annual review where our managers are going to rate our performance. Like there's